So, I have tried many a builds on Druid, but this build's burst damage is pretty nutty. And we can pretty much tank a zillion mobs using the unique ring Hunter's Zenith, which essentially makes debilitating roar have 0 seconds in cooldown, and clearing big groups of mobs is a non-issue as well. So the build has amazing single target burst, clearing large groups of mobs is also amazing, and we are extremely tanky. And not just tanky, we heal up a lot of health as well. Definitely one of the more rounded builds I've played for Druid. And I have also made a graphic for the build for people new to the build to easily understand all the important things that makes this build. But yeah, let's get into it. So I want to go over how the build works before we get into the skills and gear. So essentially all of the build's damage output is revolved around aspect of the Blurred Beast and Poison Creeper. So whenever you dash with Shred, you will instantly deal the poison damage on the enemy without consuming the poison. As in, the enemy won't lose the poison debuff, they will still take the full amount of damage from the poison. And Poison Creeper does a huge amount of poison damage from the active. So you basically activate Poison Creeper and just dash to the target to deal the full amount instantly. You can essentially do this multiple times with just one Poison Creeper active if you take the passive Primal Shred. So if you take Primal Shred, all 3 combos get a dash. Since Blurred Beast aspect states only when you dash you deal the damage, if you take Primal Shred, you can activate the aspect 3 times. And it's not just for a single target, the damage also goes to multiple targets nearby. But of course, Poison Creeper's active has a long cooldown, and this is where Pack Leader boon comes in. Every time we crit, we get a chance to reset companion skill cooldowns. Therefore, we stack crit on this build and try to get as much resets as possible. The tanky part is the unlimited amount of roars we will have by using Hunter's Zenith. Every time we kill with Shred, we get a free use of a Werebear skill. And that's why we will have almost full uptime on roar, making this build extremely tanky. So those 3s are mainly what makes this build a complete build in my opinion. So let's go over some gear affixes and aspects to look out for. I basically just went over the most important things that the build requires. Like I've listed the required skills, the pros cons, a little description. But yeah, for the gear, like here I've listed the optimal gear affixes for damage. Like if you don't really care for min-maxing and you just want to know how to boost your damage, I just listed them by rank. But I've also listed all the optimal gear affixes down here if you want to check that out too. To increase your damage, what you want is ranks to the core abilities that we are using. Shred and Poison Creeper. You will find Shred in the gloves and Creeper in your helm. Then the next important thing you should look for is critical strike chance. Then I would say attack speed is also very important because Shred's attack speed also depends on your attack speed. Shred goes up faster if you have faster attack speed, and generally attack speed is just good. The next 2 things you want to look for in the gear is critical strike damage and vulnerable damage. But yeah, those are the main things you look for if you want to just increase damage. But for the optimal gear affixes, so I've listed all of them, like here in the helm, rank to creeper. Then you want cooldown reduction, primary stat. Primary stat can be willpower, dexterity, intelligence, anything you need to get the required amount for the rare nodes on the Paragon board. I've also listed the stats required, like the stats you want to target: willpower 480, dex 450. Anyway, for optimal gear, I also listed the substitutes. Like for sure you're not gonna get the perfect rolls. I mean, you might get lucky and you might get the perfect stats, but then yeah, if you don't find those, you can have the subs in, like total armor, max spirit, all stats for your helm. And then for chest and pants, you always want to go defensive stats, full defensive stats on it. Like damage reduction from close, damage reduction while fortified, damage reduction from distance. Same thing with pants, damage reduction from close, all damage reduction stuff. The chest and pants also have some damage affixes, but I don't think they are worth it in chest and pants because the defenses affixes on chest and pants are just way better than their damage counterpart. And then yeah, the glove is important because it gives rank to Shred. So you just try to look for gloves with this first, and of course the other 3 affixes. And for boots, the first thing you want to look for is movement speed for sure. And in the weapon you want something like core skill damage, critical strike damage. For me, I also put another critical strike damage with werewolf skills. And then you definitely want vulnerable damage. You could also substitute one of the critical strike damage with like willpower. That'll give you a good damage boost as well. And then the amulet, you should look for, you probably won't get 2 of these. Maybe if you're really lucky, you might get those, but then you want rank 2 companion skills because you want to increase poison creepers damage. And then another thing you can get is Toxic Claws, where you deal poison damage whenever you crit. And then try to look for cooldown reduction in amulet. You want cooldown reduction for the poison creeper, just in case we don't reset it with pack leader boon. Or in boss fights we don't have any mobs to kill, so we want some cooldown reduction to reduce the cooldown of poison creeper. But yeah, one of the rings will be Hunter's Zenith, so that's a given. And then the other ring you want critical strike chance, critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, and try to get damage to close enemies. And I've listed the gems down here too: weapon, emerald, armor, sapphire, jewelry, skull. But yeah, those are the affixes you want to look for in your gear. And I've listed the must-have aspects. I didn't list all the aspects here. You can kind of plug and play other aspects if you like. I'll have the full build on Maxroll as well. I'll link the full build in the description. So yeah, like I mentioned before, must-have is aspect of the Blurred Beast. That's your main damage dealer. And for this specific build, you need Hunter Zenith. But I'm gonna link another build in Maxroll as well where you don't need Hunter Zenith. If you're not lucky enough to get it, I'll have a build for that too. I'll link that in the description. And you definitely want Night Howler's aspect. And then I would say also get Accelerating aspect, because the 20-30% attack speed you get from critting every time is really big. But yeah, those are the must-have aspects. But I also want to show you some aspect examples for the other pieces of gear. For the helm, chest, and pants, I have like all defensive aspects. Like for pants, I have aspect of might. Basic skills grant damage reduction. For chest, disobedience. And then for the helmet, I have the barrier aspect of the protector. And then for the glove, I have Stoneclaw's aspect. This is not a must-have, but then it does boost the damage by a little bit, because every time you crit, you deal extra 20-30% damage with lightning damage. We have nothing to do with lightning damage, but it's a good amount of damage, so you probably want to pick that up too. And yeah, I also made another build where Hunter's Zenith is not required. I just substituted another ring that did vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, and damage. I also included lucky hit chance just for a pack leader. But yeah, for this build, instead of trample, I took bulwark, because I'm getting unstoppable from there, and then bulwark just gives extra defenses since I'm not getting unlimited debilitating roar. So that's just the small change up you need if you haven't had Hunter Zenith and you still want to play this build. For the skills, I went Storm Strike for basic attack, just for the damage reduction and the vulnerable chance. And I took all of the passives here. Just more damage with core skill, a little bit of extra spirit spent. And then this is a definite pickup: Predatory Instinct, Critical Strike Chance. And then we definitely maxed out Shred. And like I said, we also need Primal Shred for this build. Primal Shred is really important for the build. Lets you dash 3 times instead of the 1 from the first dash only, if you didn't take it. And then I went even more damage reduction with Vigilance. Every time you use defensive skill, you get 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds. And we're pretty much spamming a lot of defensive skills on this build. And for debilitating roar, I went with more healing, because I felt like I didn't really need the slow here. And for Bloodhowl, I went with Spirit Generation. I think innate Bloodhowl is also a must for this build, because you're going to be spamming Bloodhowl a lot, and then it generates a lot of spirit. And then of course we max out Poison Creeper, and we take the Poison duration that's increased by 3 seconds. I mean, on paper you would think the critical strike chance would be better, because the active only lasts for 6 seconds right here. But if you make it last 3 seconds longer, that's 33% increased damage. So you definitely pick this up instead of the brutal Poison Creeper. And then I took all the Call of the Wild just to increase the damage of Poison Creeper. And for this is kind of a preference thing. I took this since we are switching between werewolf and human form a lot. Human form from basic attack or Poison Creeper, and I just generate a lot more spirit that way. It just feels better. But if you feel like you're generating enough spirit, you don't need to take this. You can spend it elsewhere. And then of course we take Venom and then Toxic Claw, we max those out. And then we take Trample, because we need the Unstoppable from it. And with Hunter Zenith, we can also spam Trample. So if you meet a group of mob that has a lot of CC, you can just use Trample as the free skill from Hunter Zenith instead of Roar. And then for the ultimate stuff, we take none of that. And then you have another choice again at the key passives. For me, I took Earth Sign Strength. You gain 20% additional maximum life while in werebear form for 3 seconds after leaving werebear form. And then we're spamming Roar a lot, so we're going in and out of werebear form, so we do get that bonus. And then when healthy, you're doing 30x increased damage. We're extremely tanky and we heal a lot, so most of the time we are over 80% health. But if you do have problems staying above 80% all the time, you should probably go with Lupin Ferocity. This is probably the weaker choice, but the damage from this is guaranteed every 6 attack. So I'll say this is not bad as well, but I think Earth Sign Strength is overall better. And I also showed example of the skill order. So if you're at full spirit and this is against a pack of mobs, you go creeper first, then you shred. And if you kill anything from the mob, you get a free roar. So you use the free roar. And then I would immediately howl, filling the spirit I've used from this one shred. Since you will gain 20 spirit from the passive for Blood Howl. And then here you get the 10% increased critical strike chance, and then you shred twice again. Or even 3 times, honestly. But since I took Clarity, where you get spirit from turning into human, I usually like to weave in my autos between the shreds. So I would weave in the autos between the shreds. So you can do that too if you took Clarity. If you didn't take Clarity, you don't really need to do that. And one really important thing about shred is you only dash to the target if you're far away enough. If you're too close to the target, you won't dash. And if you don't dash, Blurred Beast damage won't go off. So you do need to step back a little bit. You don't have to go too far, but you do need to step back a little bit just to make sure the dash goes off. And yeah, for Blood Howl, I would always use it on cooldown for the extra critical strike chance. But yeah, I've also written tips for it, so you can check that out. And for the Paragon board, I've listed all the important glyphs you would need: Exploit, Spirit, Tracker, and Werewolf. But yeah, on the boards, I would go for Exploit first. I mean, we do have some vulnerable chance from Storm Strike. But with Storm Strike's range, it's usually not enough to apply vulnerable onto like every mob. So you do want Exploit. The moment you use Poison Creeper, you're casting vulnerable on all the enemies that are hit by Poison Creeper. So on the first board, I would go Exploit first. And then the first legendary board you want to go into is probably Heightened Malice. Since the Poison Creeper is the first thing you cast, and there will definitely be more than 3 or more poison enemies nearby you. And for that board's glyph, I went for Spirit, critical strike damage with core skill, and of course we pick up a lot of the rare nodes and magic nodes along the way. I would say the third board I went into is Thunderstruck, just for the glyph socket. So in here I put Tracker in. So I also know there's another poison glyph, which I went for the last one. I think Tracker is just better than Bane. So this does state chance to deal double damage, but it's only 10%. But for Tracker, all of your poison damage lasts 33% longer. So again, this is like the Poison Creeper passive. You want the longer the poison, the more damage it does for Blurred Beast. And this is 100% chance, so it's not only 10%. So I would pick that up first. Tracker is definitely better than Bane. And then the next board I went into is Lust for Carnage. We restore Spirit every time we crit. That's pretty good. And then for the glyph, I went for Werewolf, since most of our damage output is in werewolf form. And then finally, if you do make it to level 100, I picked up Ancestral Guidance. But yeah, that is all for the build. I'll have the graphic as well as both builds, one with 100 Zenith and one without, all in the description below. I'll also link it in the comments. And if you do like this build, please consider liking and subscribing. I worked really hard on the graphic and the build. I would really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for watching.
I must wait a minute.